Broadcasting now.
What's up, guys? JGnation, it's your boy JG, and I'm with Sneed from Sneed Mobile Tech. It's been a long time. I know you guys haven't seen me. It's good to be back. Little things was going on in my personal life, but I'm back, and it's great to be back. Also, just wanna, if you guys don't know Sneed Mobile Tech, how's it going, man? You hear me?
Excellent. How are you, Jamal?
I'm great,
I
man.
hear you loud and clear, buddy.
Awesome. By the way, if there's any issue with the audio or the video, let us know so we can get that fixed. So what are we going to be talking about today, Steve?
Yeah, we're trying to work through a little bit of an audio thing right now. We're going to talk Boost. We're going to talk Metro by T-Mobile. We're going to talk Sprint and T-Mobile merger and a potential fourth carrier, national carrier, being added to the U.S. market.
That's exciting. That's exciting. When I heard about the fourth national, carrier that they wanted to add, at first I was like, you know what, this is going to be really bad for T-Mobile because they most likely going to have to give up a lot of spectrum and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is going to cause more competition, which at the end of the day is all good for the consumers. So in terms of T-Mobile's spot, I can understand that it might be a little kind of pushback on them. But in terms of for the consumers, it can do really good so that, of course, more competition, better pricing, etc.
I initially, when the merger was first proposed, I was very concerned about prepaid. I thought immediately that prepaid was going to see spike increases. So in that case, we expect like maybe Boost to be absorbed by Metro, by T-Mobile, and in that case, we could clearly understand that there would probably be a price hike because there's less competition. But now with the potential that Boost may be divested into its own standalone prepaid carrier that's going to essentially be an MVNO on the new T-Mobile network, I think that the prepaid side can retain some pricing competitive edge, which is good. It's a cost-sensitive segment of the wireless world. And then from the postpaid side with the merger, we're probably expecting more of the price hike there. So I think now I feel better about prepaid. I think with Cricket, Metro by T-Mobile, and then Boost continuing to compete, it gets people better bargains on their monthly plans, as well as keeping things competitive from different things like port-ins and different promotions on devices. So I'm actually encouraged by what we're seeing so far with the DOJ and what they're trying to do with the prepaid side with Boost.
100%. I agree. I feel like the most people that are actually going to benefit at the end of the day, and especially this is why the DOJ is doing this, is the prepaid side. The prepaid side, whether it's Cricket, Boost Mobile, Metro by T-Mobile, the consumers are going to be able, because I'll be honest right now, I had a lot of people talk bad about Boost Mobile and how service is currently under Sprint. So if all of this boils down and the merger goes through, I feel like if they join forces with T-Mobile and then they can start using the T-Mobile network, the service is going to be much better than what it is now. I do have some people in the chat saying there is a little static on the line. Is it clearer now? Do you guys hear it?
I'm going to try one thing real quick.
Yeah, so like you guys are saying, Boost is horrible, but here's the thing. I've seen some people say Boost is really good. So at the end of the day, it all depends on what area you're in. There's places where Boost Mobile is really good because they still use the CDMA. For example, if you're in a rural area and you don't have a lot of GSM network, being on CDMA is still going to be preferred, and it's going to be really good.
All right, how's my sound, JG?
Okay, yeah, that's better now.
Okay, we're good?
Yes, awesome.
Okay.
And so another thing I want to mention is actually how this is going to affect Cricket. And so, because as you guys know, Cricket is under AT&T. So this is going to push the bar even more for them to actually start, putting on promotions and trying to really compete. Because as of recently, I think for the past year, I haven't seen them do any types of promotions. They've kind of just been very steady, just working on just selling phones. They haven't been aggressive in their marketing tactics like Boost and Metro has been.
So the thing about Cricket is always going to hold its hat on the idea that their network has the best coverage in terms of all the prepaid and MVNO carriers. They are running on the AT&T network. It's not the fastest type of feature set in terms of overall download and upload speeds, but what they're giving you is extended coverage throughout the U.S. and it's very capable across the nation. And because they're just kind of taking the angle that we have the best coverage and the speed's not that important to most people, especially for those that are on the prepaid side, they've neglected to try to compete aggressively with devices and promotions, like you said.
Yeah.
But the thing is when the new Boost, when and if it does get divested, and it retains coverage on an expanding T-Mobile coverage map, it does give them the edge. Because if you think about it, Boost has about 7 or 8 million subs. Cricket's at about 10 million subs. They're not that far off. And with the new T-Mobile, you can probably expect a lot of people switching to Boost if the rates continue to be competitive and it becomes better in terms of performance on a better network. And I would not be surprised if somehow, some way, Boost was able to get some form or access of 5G within the next 3 or 4 years, because Metro by T-Mobile is going to have it for sure. We already got word from T-Mobile that they'll have access to 5G.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually, now that you've mentioned the 10 million subscribers now on Cricket, I was looking at the rate of their growth. Recently, there was a very steady growth on T-Mobile's end in terms of prepaid, not postpaid. Postpaid has been doing really good. But in terms of prepaid, they've kind of, the past 3 years, steadily grown by I think about 200,000 subscribers per year, or I'm sorry, per quarter. While seeing the ones that are on Cricket, they've actually have got more subscribers converting to the Cricket. They kind of hide their numbers. Cricket does more than T-Mobile. T-Mobile's numbers are actually more accessible when I was searching online. But I did realize that Cricket was, for some reason, I was actually surprised, growing faster. And they were actually rated better connection and better service than T-Mobile. So I was surprised to see that maybe this is why they're saying, okay, by the way, they're also in debt for $175 million.
Which company are you referring to as in debt?
AT&T. So for them to pay off their debt, they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't spend our money, because investors were going off on AT&T. So for them not to spend their money on like promotions, they kept some of that money so they can pay off their debt. T-Mobile, last I was looking at, they just probably owed maybe about 20 million, but the most that owes is AT&T. So while I was looking at the growth, I was surprised that although they haven't been doing as many promotions and stuff like that, they've still been getting a lot of people pouring in from other carriers to Cricket. So that's interesting to see, and how that will boil over if this merger does go through.
I'm not really surprised that they're still experiencing growth. The coverage is good. Most of the time, I think people are enjoying service on Cricket. They're seeing LTE. The coverage map is there. The roaming agreements, however, I'm not sure if they support LTE, but at least people are getting some form of HSPA, a functional data connection of some sort. I think there's good enough coverage. And when people try a provider like Boost, who doesn't necessarily support the same roaming agreements, when these people travel, they know that they're going to get a more reliable coverage and service from Cricket. So, for anybody who's using Cricket or using a prepaid carrier, they have to consider that carefully. Is that provider have a strong network performance in the area in which they're residing?
Correct. That is actually the most important thing. And a lot of people, even in the comments, I see, Andy Logan saying Boost is good and bad in my area at work. 80 down, 1.5 miles down the road. Going home on the same road is 0.8 download speed. And I do agree with that. It's all about the area, right? You might have areas where Cricket is doing way better than Boost or Metro, and you have areas where I've seen Boost do way better than Metro or Cricket. So having said that, in terms of reception wise and the connection speeds and etc., usually what I recommend, my subscribers and people that are watching, that always, see the reception or the connection maps that they provide. And before you go out and you choose whether you want to go with AT&T, with it's Cricket with Boost, whatever it is. And by the way, Block Shaker, he's I think a dealer with Metro PCS. What's up, Block Shaker? I want to know, what do you think? Like in the coming days, let's say this fourth carrier comes in, what might happen to these prepaid carriers?
I think what happens with the fourth carrier is going to be playing catch up. The fourth carrier is probably going to get a nice allotment of spectrum out of T-Mobile, and actually I should say specifically from Sprint. From what I'm understanding, band 41, which is, probably Sprint's most important band, which offers capacity and speed, some of that spectrum might be divested here in this merger. And if that's the case, that kind of sort of disables T-Mobile a little bit. It does reduce their capacity, and I think in certain markets it's going to be the case. But I think they're also going to probably have to give up some low-band spectrum as well, because the new provider is going to be trying to, create a network really, really quickly. And to do that, to get coverage, you're going to need low frequency. So a combination of what Sprint has to offer with a little bit of what T-Mobile has in-house is going to be the framework for what the new network is going to be. And I think along with some roaming agreements with the new T-Mobile, I think that new provider is going to be standalone and can be successful, but it won't have anything to do with the prepaid side. I don't think that's going to be the case, not for at least, 5 to 6 years. Could MVNO operate on the network eventually? Sure. But probably not early on, because capacity and range is going to be, the most important thing, trying to get this network going on a good note.
Mm-hmm. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah, it's going to take time. And they're saying, 3 to 5 years or 3 to 6 years. That's very, very aggressive. And that's, honestly, to me, I think it's pie in the sky. I just don't see it being realistic unless they get help from the government.
Or Amazon. I mean, what do you think if Amazon just comes in, pushes?
Before I talk about Amazon, I just want to give a shout out to Amisa Webster, who offered a super chat donation. Thank you so much for the generosity and your kindness there. In terms of Amazon, Amazon has a lot of money. In terms of operational revenue, I mean, we're talking about a company that generates $233 billion annually. And they're very profitable. They've got long, extended, and numerous tentacles. They do quite a bit. So they've got, their Amazon Prime services. They've got the free shipping, 2-day shipping, which I hear they're moving to 1-day shipping. There's a lot of things that they want to do with gaming. There's a lot of things they want to do and continue to do with video. If they were to become the fourth national carrier, they're going to be impactful. They're going to offer something, I think, that makes them separate from all the other online retailers. I mean, who knows? Maybe they call it, I've heard people joking about this Fire Mobile or Amazon Mobile, whatever the name is going to be. I don't think it really matters. But they are a very wealthy and rich company that does have the resources, and I think they have the know-how to do this. Correct. Probably more so than any cable provider, with the exception of Dish, which we could probably talk about Dish on its own accord as a potential provider. But I would say, honestly, Amazon could really shake things up and become a legitimate player in this, especially for people who are leaving Sprint and don't want to be on the new T-Mobile, which there are some people in that position.
I agree with you 100%. I see that Amazon, it has the funding, it has that capital to kind of just basically spend it on whatever. And if it takes up this fourth carrier, they're going to do an amazing job. But I feel that Amazon somehow, some way, I don't know, I just don't trust them that much. The way they're just trying to basically do a monopoly on everything they get into. They just want to rule out everybody. I was watching a documentary about them, recently, how they actually got into a certain field. I think it was like baby toys or clothing and stuff like that. And they told the competition, we want to buy you guys out. And when they refused, they set up their own sections, and they were selling it at lower than cost, because they could do that, because again, they have that capital, until they got rid of that competitor. And they actually gave them another option, said, okay, you guys, we're still willing to buy you guys out. They still refused. So what they ended up saying, okay, no problem. They made them go out of business, And then right after they went out of business, they increased the prices back. So the way I see Amazon is, okay, if it does go in and it does kind of compete inside, what's going to happen is it's going to compete really hard and maybe get to the top. But once it's at the top, it's just going to start screwing consumers over. Oh, we got to wait and see. By the way, not to mention, TracFone is trying to get in here as well. And TracFone is one of the biggest prepaid carriers. People don't know that, but it's actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, bigger than T-Mobile. I'm sorry, bigger than Metro PCS, bigger than Cricket, bigger than US Cellular, and all of these. So if TracFone actually gets in, that's also a really good, advantage that they have with their experience.
So here's the thing, JG. There's a lot of people in the chat, and a lot of people speculate these things, and I can debunk a lot of this. First of all, US Cellular is not a legitimate national carrier. They do have roaming agreements, but they don't have native, and they also don't have native LTE or even roaming LTE across the nation. So they're not a legitimate nationwide carrier. To call them a standalone, they don't really have the provisions that Sprint can offer. So that's the first part. The second part is US Cellular wants nothing to do with this. I don't think they're interested in getting to the scale that this requires. So I think we can kind of count US Cellular out. The next thing to address is, I hear people mention TracFone. The DOJ is ensuring that companies like TracFone don't just all of a sudden start absorbing more customers. If you take the 7 or 8 million customers on Boost and add them to TracFone, you're at almost 40 million customers.
Wow.
You're at least at 35 million. They're not going to allow that. That's the whole reason why they're regulating this, is to avoid that. So take TracFone and just throw it out the window. They're not going to be able to get Boost or its customers. And I also see people in the chat, they mention the different, TracFone, Boost. This is a lot of speculation. The only thing we know right now is Amazon wants in. Peter Adderton, the original founder of Boost, he wants in. Those are the only two names we know for sure. The other piece is possibly Dish. But whoever gets Boost is not going to be the fourth national carrier. I think I should just say this again. Whoever buys Boost is not going to be a fourth national carrier. There's going to be a fourth national carrier created. That's something totally different. Boost is going to stay Boost. It's going to operate as Boost, and it's going to operate off of the new T-Mobile network. They're two separate things. They are not related at all. Okay. So I think it's just important because people are losing sight of this. Those are two different conditions. Yes. The Boost part is just because of Sprint, right? And then the national part is, okay, Sprint's gone. We need a fourth carrier to replace them. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. And not to mention, I think there was another condition also in there that Tito Escobar is asking. He said, big question, if Amazon buys Boost Mobile, what network will they piggyback on? So like Sneed was saying, so I think at the end of the day, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, for 3 or 4 years, they have to allow Boost to use the network and not to increase the prices. Was that one of the conditions?
The conditions for T-Mobile is they're not going to be increasing prices for at least 3 years. Mm-hmm. The conditions for Boost are Boost is going to continue to operate as a standalone company, and it's going to operate on the new T-Mobile network, and their prices will be locked in terms of their wholesale rates.
Correct. So that is actually really good. So if they do go back to Peter, he's the original owner, like you said, or Amazon, whoever ends up buying it, they will be using the T-Mobile network. And again, this is going to be great news because if T-Mobile is able to really, get on top of its game and do the 5G, this is going to be really good for Sprint and Boost customers worldwide. Dish Network has a lot of spectrum. Yeah, somebody mentioned that, so that is true.
Yeah, if I could be totally honest about what I see happening with Boost, I feel like Boost has the most potential to serve its customers best. The thing about Metro that gives them the upper hand in all of this is they'll be the first to everything on prepaid. So if 5G comes to prepaid, it will be Metro by T-Mobile. if the new long extended range LTE, the 600 megahertz, 700 megahertz rollout, they're the first customers to take advantage of that. So if Boost was to potentially operate on the new T-Mobile network, it's locked in and it's in place and it's being regulated that they get those benefits as well. But something tells me Boost will be more affordable than T-Mobile, and that's going to be built into the regulations. So if Metro by T-Mobile is selling service their unlimited plan for $60 a month, and then a comparable plan is on Boost, it's going to be like 50 or 55. They're going to be better priced because of that wholesale lock-in. And Peter Adderton said, if I'm buying Boost, I'm getting price locks, I'm getting a great wholesale deal, and I'm getting Spectrum, and I'm getting the 7 to 8 million customers that are on there. And he was adamant about that. That's the only way he's going to do it.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of because I follow him also, and I've seen that a lot of dealers from Boost Mobile, they actually want Peter to go back because they know Peter will do a great job. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's his baby. He's the one that created it, right?
Well, think about the past. Think about the history here, JG. He sold Boost in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
He's been away from the name and the branding for a while, but he didn't even sell to Sprint. He sold to Nextel. And then Nextel was purchased by Sprint. So you think about the history. He's been away from the company for a long time. Regulators see that and think to themselves, here's a guy who knows the business. Here's a guy who founded the business successfully, sold it. We can trust that the business is in good hands. And I think that's the case. I think people probably remember the heydays of Boost and remember that this guy was very successful and the network was strong. And they were probably very profitable and very happy with what he was doing there.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually seen him say something on his Twitter once. He's like, you know what? If the DOG wants to really pick anybody, they should pick me, because if they really care for the consumers, I'm the one that has been fighting against this merger since day one, that they should not do this. And these guys are just coming in here because they find an opportunity. They don't really care. But I've been here since day one fighting with you guys, and they should look at me. Something that Mill Hustles here mentioned, he said, I don't think the DOG will allow TracFone or Amazon to buy Boost. These companies are too big. And I can actually agree with him. And Blockshaker said, fourth national carrier has to be Dish. They have spectrum to cover the whole of the U.S. So the DOG, I kind of understand where Mill Hustle is coming from, where they're saying, okay, Amazon is already too big, and we don't want them to get even bigger. At the end of the day, they want to stop the monopoly, right, of anything. They want, at the end of the day, more competition, better rates, better services for the customers. And so if Amazon's already being too big, like, okay, forget them on the side. And then TracFone is already, like you mentioned, is already too big. So forget that. But you have Dish. First of all, it's not too big, but it also has that spectrum that allows it to actually become a big player. So you never know. Maybe they do have a chance.
You know, JG, I want to take it back to something you just said. Peter Adderton was very anti-merger 4 months ago.
Yeah.
You ask him right now, and he's very pro-merger under the conditions and the concessions that are being placed between the DOJ and the FCC. So that means that I think he's on the side of the DOJ, like, okay, well, what they're going to present at these concessions, I can work with that. So me personally, I feel very confident not only in the concessions presented to him that he could take advantage of them, but I also feel like he operates in the best interest of the customers more so than anybody else in the prepaid segment. Yep. So, and if you think about it, Peter Adderton and John Leisure are very similar in a lot of ways. They're trailblazers in the industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that don't have faith in carriers, it's just because of Verizon. It's just because of AT&T. It's just because of, the old cliche ways of the carriers. But T-Mobile is different. And Peter's going to come in and kind of take the same approach. I'm going to work with T-Mobile to be successful with prepaid and with Boost. So I kind of like that potentially they're working as a team to offer, so T-Mobile's doing all this postpaid. We're going to stay in our lane and do prepaid. And I think, like I said, people are struggling to understand the difference between Boost being divested and being a standalone prepaid company. Whoever buys Boost is not going to be the fourth national carrier. They're going to be Boost. They're just going to be a better Boost.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I agree with you. And I think that if Peter actually goes in, I'll be rooting for it. And I think that it'll benefit the consumers the most. At the end of the day, all these other companies, whether you look at Verizon right now, whether you look at AT&T, what matters to them is their investors at the end of the day. And what matters to them most is corporate America,
Yeah.
it might look that they're actually worried about the consumer, quote unquote, but in reality, their pockets is what matters the most. And so, hopefully, you have better service, better communication with the subscribers, and Peter is, well based to do that. I still have somebody here saying that the sound and audio is kind of jittery, so we'll do kind of like conclusions in a minute. We're gonna kind of probably close it soon, just so that we can get that fixed, and hopefully we'll get it fixed. And next week we'll have a much better audio quality. Don't worry about it. Let me see what else we haven't covered here today.
The last thing to mention, I think, is probably just to kind of close off with the Dish Network. So,
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned it earlier. We kind of prefaced it a little bit. So Dish has invested $30 billion in spectrum holdings over the course of the last 10 years or so. I want to say it dates back to mid 2008. They started buying up spectrum, and they haven't been using it. Now, why Dish is important is because people are going to speculate. Here's a company that has a lot of spectrum. You give them a little bit more of the low band spectrum, and they can build a legitimate fourth carrier network. The only problem I can foresee is potentially them not having enough spectrum in certain markets, which means they're going to have roaming agreements with the other carriers. And of course, if the DOJ, or I should probably say the FCC would be regulating this, but if the DOJ builds in concessions for them to get those roaming agreements, then I think Dish will sign on. But based on the last 10 years of them just buying spectrum and doing nothing with it, I'm not encouraged necessarily that they're going to become that fourth player. That's why I feel like I'm leaning towards Amazon. But that just kind of close off the idea of Dish.
I see. I feel like the government would help them out though, because if the DOJ really wanted Dish to get into it, and they're pushing, 'cause we don't know what's really going down on there. This is all speculation. But at the end of the day, if they really don't like Amazon taking over or anybody else, and they actually like Dish Network taking on, I have a feeling they would be willing to. Because who has the power at the end of the day? It's the government, and they'll be able to push more spectrum towards them than others, and get it into markets that they're actually right now they're not in. And somebody said Dish will buy out Sprint if T-Mobile can't. I have a feeling that the merger is going to go through. The reason I say this is that T-Mobile needs it too bad to let it go, because I've heard, I don't know if this is accurate, but I've heard that if this merger doesn't go through, T-Mobile is going to be basically going to have a hard time in the market,
I don't agree. I think if T-Mobile gets this merger and gets to retain a lot of the band 41, a lot of the 2.5 gigahertz, they actually will probably bolster the best 5G network across the nation. The reason I say that is because T-Mobile is going to be utilizing low-frequency bandwidth for their 5G nationwide. They're going to cover a lot of space. Verizon is really focusing on millimeter wave and bolstering larger urban, densely packed cities. T-Mobile's doing that with millimeter wave, but they're also focusing on their low-frequency bandwidth. So when you have low frequencies, you can cover long extended range, which AT&T is going to struggle with, as well as Verizon. So with this merger, with that 2.5 gigahertz spectrum, which every carrier agrees is the most valuable one for 5G, that's T-Mobile if they get this merger. T-Mobile can win in 5G in 3 years. I don't care what Verizon's doing right now. I don't care what AT&T is doing right now. If T-Mobile gets the merger and they get the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum, they win.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's interesting? You actually mentioned this earlier on, and they're going to make sure that Metro or T-Mobile are going to be the first with 5G, because 4G LTE, people don't know this, but it was Metro PCS was the first carrier with 4G LTE in the US.
That's
So,
true.
yeah, we'll see what's going to happen. But it's very interesting. If you want to know more details, there's a lot of stuff happening, and it's happening fast. They're just having closed concessions, and they're just every day you got new updates coming up from this merger. If you are interested to be kept up and updated on what's going on, make sure to go follow Sneed from Sneed Mobile Tech. We'll have, maybe you can actually post a link to your channel right now in the comments. Everybody, we got 54 people right now. Actually, make sure to like this video so it can reach more people, and go subscribe to Sneed. I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank all my subscribers. We actually crossed 50,000 subscribers. So thank you all for being with us throughout this whole time. We've been since 2013. Thank you, Sneed, for being on the live stream. And hopefully every week we can probably even bring on a guest and see how how this merger is going off. Any final comments you want to say?
Thank you for having me on. I want to just take this opportunity to let you guys know that the merger is changing daily. We get news, we get updates, we get information from the meetings between T-Mobile representation and the DOJ. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the Sneed Mobile Tech YouTube channel. Ding the bell to be notified because the videos come out frequently. And of course, we've got the podcast here, the JGTechBlog podcast. We'll do this every Sunday. We'll keep you guys up to date on everything that's going on from all the carriers, as well as the merger and the prepaid side.
And by the way, we have a really nice Discord. I'm going to have that link down in the comments and in the description, where we all just every day we chat and we throw in the speeds that we're getting everywhere. So join us. It would be great to have you guys. Sneed Mobile Tech and JGnation. All right, guys. It's great to have you guys back. Thank you all for watching. See you guys. Take care.
Peace. Later.